Senator Joe Manchin has decided that while Democrats seem to be on a pretty good streak legislatively, he's going to go ahead and rain on that parade and specifically go out after the most powerful people in the country, student loan borrowers. Yeah. So in a recent interview with reporters, Manchin, a conservative, pro-corporate Democrat in the Senate, said, quote, "I just thought that it was excessive," meaning Biden's very modest student loan forgiveness. "I just respectfully disagree on that." Oh, do you? He respectfully disagrees on that. The guy who collects $500,000 a year from a coal company that he's invested in thinks that it's excessive to cancel $10,000 to $20,000 of student loan debt in a country that is grappling with $1.6 trillion of outstanding student loan debt. Okay, well, let's hear a little more from Joe Manchin here. He says, "When people were calling me from back in West Virginia, I would give them all the options they had that would reduce their loan by going to work in the federal government. You have to earn it." Yeah, lawmaker in the Senate who has done nothing but stand in the way of important legislation, who has been a massive obstacle to the Democrats' agenda, including Joe Biden's agenda, has some thoughts about earning things. The guy who literally sits on his ass, maybe works half the year and collects money from his investments, doing absolutely nothing, just collecting the money from these investments. He wants to tell you, you need to earn it. And what I want to focus on in this story, in this context, is how student loan debt and making higher education unattainable for people doesn't just screw over the individuals who want to better their lives. To be sure, it does screw over the people who want to better their lives. It also screws over the country. Because take a look around you right now. Take a look at the incompetence, the unwillingness to engage or use any critical thinking, maybe the inability to use critical thinking. There was a reason why this country used to invest far more in public colleges to make them affordable for people. It's because it actually benefited the country. For every dollar that was invested in funding public higher education, the country got $7 back, okay? Because these are people who get the education, they go out there, and what do? They become productive members of society, they innovate, they're creators. I mean, there was a reason why FDR focused on that. And there's a reason why, you know, there were budget cuts when it came to funding public colleges, community colleges, which used to be free at one point in this country. And at one point, after not being free anymore, they were at least affordable. Now, not so much. And there's a very real reason for that. Robert Reich put together a pretty great video. It's a little old, but I thought that it was telling. Like, what sparked austerity associated with higher education in this country? Let's watch.
You start out in 1954 by saying by 1968 you can't say that hurts your backfire, so you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights and all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract now, you're talking about cutting taxes and all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things, and the byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites. We want to cut this, and we want is much more abstract than even the busing thing, and a hell of a lot more abstract than this.
And as we've scared whites about integrated public education, we've built support for politics that says cut public funding to public schools, to public colleges, and indeed to just about everything public.
Over the course of one generation, states have cut about a quarter out of every dollar they used to spend on funding public college. What's made up the difference? A tripling of tuition and an average of almost $30,000 in student debt.
So in the beginning of that clip, you hear from a Ronald Reagan strategist, Lee Atwater, about how, listen, it's not so popular to be overt in our racism anymore. So we need to practice our racism in a much more abstract way. And the best way to do that is cutting funding to programs that tend to benefit, yes, it benefits poor white people, but overall, mostly benefit people of color. We want to punish them. We don't want them to have those opportunities. We want to practice our racism in an abstract way. They want to be a little more covert about it. And so that's when you start seeing these cuts in public colleges. And as was stated perfectly in that video, what makes up the difference? I mean, the colleges need to be funded somehow. They end up getting funded by making up the difference by charging higher tuition. And everyone ends up getting hurt by that, obviously. But the root issue in the very beginning of that, the thinking that led to all of these cuts, is the same garbage, discrimination, and racism that we've seen in this country. And for all the people who aren't Black, who have been victimized by this system that makes higher education unaffordable, understand that issues of discrimination and racism affect all of us, every single one of us. The other thing I wanted to talk about is how Manchin is not the only Democrat who spoke out against forgiving a modest amount of student loan debt. You also have Tim Ryan, another Democrat, because he's seeking re-election, and he is so delusional that he thinks providing economic relief for people actually hurts his chances of getting reelected. Like, what kind of clown thinks that? Think about how Republicans reacted to Biden's executive order, his announcement on forgiving student loan debt. They panicked because they knew it was going to help Biden and the Democrats in the polling. And guess what? It did. But these corporate Democrats are so stupid that they're like, oh, no, it's too much. It's too much. I'm going to run away from a popular policy. Okay, so here's what he said. This is Tim Ryan. As someone who's paying off my own family's student loans, I know the costs of higher education are too high. And while there's no doubt that a college education should be about opening opportunities, waiving debt for those already on a trajectory to financial security sends the wrong message. Let me just remind you that the debt forgiveness was means tested. So for all the people out there who are making $125,000 or more per year, they don't qualify for any debt forgiveness. It's means tested. But Tim Ryan and all the other corporate politicians out there intentionally leave that information out of their argument. Because look, when they claim they want the means testing, it's not really about the means testing. They just don't want the policy, okay? Because even when you implement the means testing that they purport to want, they pretend like it doesn't exist because they don't want the policy. And for everyone out there who thinks, oh, well, the government's going to lose money now for forgiving a modest amount of student loan debt. Are they? Have you taken a look at how much these students have paid the federal government in interest every single year in these federal student loans? As much as $70 billion a year in interest? I think they've paid enough, okay? A little bit of relief for ordinary people in this country is long overdue. And for all the corporate Democrats out there who are needlessly hurting themselves by speaking out against economic relief for people, you don't deserve to get reelected. You just don't.